Hair? Now I don't have hair, and they're like, "Who the heck is that?"
Well, I scoot Pete over a little bit.
I was told I look like Kojak, but between a combination of Kojak and Goldberg. Hey, folks, welcome to a brand new show, the Trailer Park Show.
Jack and Goldberg.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The rest of Goldberg. Yes. I don't know why that happened, but it happened. We're here with a brand new show here. We're glad to be here, and thank you for watching today. We're going to ask and talk about the ever popular question is, what can you do with $1 billion?
Goldberg, I would say it more like The Rock or something.
Well, no, not The Rock. We're talking about my bald head, ladies and gentlemen.
What's that name? Vin Diesel.
Oh, no. Not Vin Diesel. Long story in this one, you guys will see it on Facebook. If you guys are friends with me, I'll tell you the story about it later on. So,
I'm obviously not Richard Franklin. He couldn't make it tonight, so
what's going on?
Recognize
you probably didn't recognize
I thought
him.
you were Richard,
Exactly.
I'm sorry.
Exactly. So we're going to ask every popular question: what can you do with $1 billion? There is a bond going on with the AISD where they want to spend $1 billion of your money to do a whole bunch of stuff, predominantly on the west side, and we have a group of people that are fighting the bond here because of what it's going to do or what the potentials are going to be in very important parts of Austin. So allow me to go ahead and do a quick introduction with everybody. Obviously, across from me, you have Pokey. To his left, we have Monica Loera Sanchez, who we are going to be saying, we will be calling her from here on out Monica Loera, or Miss Loera. We also have Larry Amaro. And also next to me is Pete Salazar, and then of course, well, there's me. So it's not a big deal, guys. So we want to talk about AISD, and I want to give an opportunity to have our guests talk a little bit about what they're doing and what their concerns are with the school board. So obviously, ladies first, if you can, Miss Loera, if you can tell us who you are again and which group you represent, and a little bit synopsis of the group.
Great. So my name is Monica Loera Sanchez. I'm a native Austinite, and I am a founding member as well as co-chair of the Save East Austin Schools Political Action Committee. We formed just about maybe 3 months ago at the insistence of community members across East Austin who are very concerned about the bond and the impact that it will have on East Austin schools. Primarily, we're concerned about 6 schools that will be affected by this bond. 5 of them have been listed for either sale or consolidation or closure, and 1 of them is being considered for a move. So the 5 schools that are up for sale or consolidation or closure are Metz, Brook, Sanchez, Norman, and Bertha Sadler Means, all east of I-35. And then the 1 school that's considered to be moved is Eastside Memorial High School, which would be moved over to the old Anderson building. And all of those changes basically came about right around 3 months ago when it was all made public by an article through, I think it was KXAN News. And the district has denied that they're going to sell these properties, but when they talk about consolidation, what that means is that they're going to combine at least 2 or 3 properties into one, so the other 2 schools or 3 schools will end up closing. And they don't want to admit it because they understand that there's a lot of people that this will affect. There's a lot of neighborhoods that this will affect, and the communities around each of these schools will be affected as well. And we all believe that they did not choose schools in West Austin because those parents are louder and more vocal and would not allow something like that to happen in West Austin.
They got more clout?
Exactly. They do. And so we formed this political action committee basically as a grassroots organization from the bottom up with parents that are affected by all of these potential closures or the move for Eastside Memorial. And we're also fed up. We feel that enough is enough. Austin ISD has long picked on East Austin schools, and we're just not going to take it anymore. This is enough.
Okay. Larry?
Okay, I'm Larry Amaro. I'm the president of the Johnson High School Ex-Students Association. And just to follow up on what Monica was talking about, she mentioned 3 schools, and people say, well, how do you get this information? Well, this is something that's actually in print, because people say, do you have that on paper someplace? Yep, we do. This is from the Austin Independent School District, one of their handouts that they give out as to what they're going to be doing with the money. I don't know if we can zoom in on this, but this is actually showing 3 of the schools that Monica mentioned. And here we have Metz Elementary School, Sanchez Elementary School, and Zavala Elementary School. So, as you mentioned, if you consolidate this, by the way, the school district would always talk about this. They would try to avoid the word closure. We're not, they didn't want to say we're going to close some schools. So they would say, they came up with the term consolidation. And so, of course, when you consolidate something, you put 2 or more things into one, meaning that what's going to happen to the others. So in this case, what's going to happen to 2 of these schools? Another school she mentioned is Brook Elementary School. There's no mention of what's going to happen to Brook, but we know that Brook is the first in line to close, according to the studies that the bond committee came up with. They're in the 1 to 6 years to close, and if these schools don't meet 75% of capacity, they're in line to close. The school board has gone over this in their meetings, so we know that directly from them that that's what they plan to do. So, to answer the question why I'm here, that you asked a while ago, as a member or as a native East Austinite, I was born and reared in East Austin. I went through the schools in East Austin. I went to Brook, Go Valley, Sanchez elementary schools, and then I also went to Allen Junior High School and Johnson High School. And now Allen Junior High School is not mentioned in those schools that Monica, that list that the school district puts out, but it is on as one of the topics tonight. As we're talking right now, the school board is about to talk about what to do with Allen Junior High School, which was a feeder school to Johnson High School, and they're planning to sell it. In 2 weeks from tonight, they could decide to vote to get rid of Allen Junior High School, to sell it. So if after the show, if you tune into the board session, the work session, you'll find out if they're going to put it on the agenda for the next meeting. That I'll stop and I'll let people.
Hello, my name is Pete Salazar, and I'm with the Johnson Powell Alumni Group. Originally, the Johnson Powell Alumni Group was to help support the Powell groups of Johnson, just to be there to help them out with anything they need to further the Powell program, to help out the community. Now, given the nature of this bond and what he can do harm to the Eastside Memorial, we felt it was imperative to take a political stance against the bond, because ultimately what this bond will do is further damage the community of Eastside Memorial by taking away those students from their schools. And we want to first say that we're not against supporting schools, but we want to support schools in an effective manner that includes all communities of Austin, which this bond does not do, and that's why the Johnson Powell Alumni Group is standing opposed against it. Well, we can talk further as we get into that conversation. I just wanted to introduce myself. I graduated from Johnson in 1998. I'm a native Austinite, and I've been around these areas for a long time discussing these issues. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So tell us a little bit about the understanding of the bond. I mean, I know that many of you have been out talking to groups about this deal that the school wants the people to vote on. What's in the bond? What's the meat and potatoes of it?
It's a $1 billion bond, and it's really geared towards funding buildings and bringing them up to par or improving them for, like if they have a leaky roof or something like that. And in this bond, there's also 5 brand new schools in it, including a new middle school in the Mueller neighborhood, and a couple of new elementary schools, including a replacement for Go Valley Elementary. The thing that we see as not so good about that is that AISD currently has a 7,500 deficit in students, meaning that we're under-enrolled by 7,500 students. And in the last week, the Statesman reported that in the last year, AISD lost another 1,600 students. So we have 8,600 empty seats in the district, and yet they want to build new schools. It doesn't make any sense. And from the perspective of a parent who watches how AISD is spending their money on a regular basis, I see a lot of mismanagement currently happening in the district. So it makes me wonder, why would they come to taxpayers for more money when they can't even fund or manage the money that they have now?
And I think to put it in layman's terms, we do have an issue with schools that need to be come up to code and things of that nature. But that is being used as an excuse, as a mechanism and a vehicle for AISD to further overextend itself, which is ultimately going to come and affect the community in negative ways in both finance and just culture and the way we go from our day-to-day lives. There's a way to meet these needs that the schools need without overextending ourselves in a bond capacity.
Yeah, and okay, so what's in it and what's in the bond? If just to follow up on what Monica was saying, building these new schools that you mentioned, the school board for all these years, they've complained several years now. They've complained that they've lost students to charter schools. If you look in East Austin, they complain that there aren't enough kids in these schools, and therefore they should be consolidated. So how can they justify the fact that they're going to build actually three schools in these under-enrolled school areas in East Austin? They're talking as if, hey, we've got to close schools. On the other hand, they're saying we've got to build schools there. It doesn't make sense.
Right.
You got to do one or the other. And logically, you'd want to focus on getting those schools that are under-enrolled to get more students in there. We have seen how magnet schools have brought in students to schools. They can be doing the same thing there in these schools. And right now, they're actually practicing something that I've been promoting. That is to move boundaries. You have Brook School, which right now, in effect, has had a boundary moved to allow students from across the river to go into Brook. And they want to do away with that instead of expanding that type of thinking. And you look at the other schools they're building, Johnston, LBJ, bringing that into the Johnston campus to take away the students from the school that I went to put them into another school. All this doesn't make sense. Another school they're building besides Go Valley and the new Anderson campus would be the school in Northeast, just 3 miles away from Allen Junior High School. They're proposing to build a school there. Why not bring those students into Allen and continue Allen as a feeder for Johnston High School, which would get Johnston more students? The things they're doing just don't make sense.
I think it's important to note, to understand that schools on the east side or East Side Memorial and other middle schools and things of that nature were under-enrolled by mismanagement of previous school boards. They made decisions that previously affected the ability for students to be enrolled. And I can give you an example. When I went to Johnston in 1998 or 1994 when I was a freshman, our incoming class was 2,000 students.
Mhm.
So now you have to ask yourself the question, from 1994 up to now that it's Eastside Memorial and they did these changes, I believe the Eastside Memorial's enrollment is 500. So how do you go from 2,000, a 5A school, schools filled up, you have every capacity that comes with being a large school, to 500 students, same building, same capacity? It's because it's decisions that were made to affect the population in ways that the school board wanted.
Okay.
And go ahead.
Now, one of the things that I can say on this part, because it affected my daughter a few years ago when she was going to when she was enrolled with AISD, which is one of the questions I wanted to bring up. No Child Left Behind affected a lot of schools. For example, my daughter was actually supposed to be going to Reagan High School, but because of the issue of them not being able to pass STAR qualifications, they moved her to another school. They moved her out further out to go to another school that performed well. One of the problems that came up with Eastside or Johnson is that they weren't passing STAR, and it wasn't until last year that they barely started passing. And I believe that some of the other schools in East Austin had that similar problem where some of the schools were not passing the STAR test, and because of No Child Left Behind, after the second or third year, they were allowed to move children to another school. In many cases, they were moving them west of 35 to one of the schools that was nearby there. And that was one of the things that we saw when we were monitoring what was going on. In fact, when I moved out here to Austin, that was the things that we took notice about the schools. And one of the questions that we were going to bring up or ask is that if the schools are performing well, it's my understanding that all the schools right now in the east of 35 are performing well. They actually passed. They actually passed our testing, except for Mendez Middle School, which is down in Dove Springs, which is a different part of East Austin.
And Martin.
And Martin's located where?
It's close to off of Haskell and Holly Street.
Okay, so those two schools, but everybody else is performing well. And what has the school board said about bringing some of the students back?
Add Go Valley to that list. They're underperforming too. I'm sorry, go ahead.
The school board has not acted to bring some of those students back.
Okay.
They have allowed for there to be a mass exodus of students in East Austin to charter schools for the most part. What I can say about the Every Child Succeeds Act and the No Child Left Behind Act is that they're both federal programs that in many ways are basically created by people at the federal level who have no clue what's happening on the ground. And they're harming students and schools more than they are helping for the most part. So the federal mandates that are in place are not exactly public school friendly.
Right.
And I can also say that the fact that students have left Austin ISD or the fact that schools are underperforming are responsibilities of the superintendent and the school board. If they see that there's a school out there, for example, Martin is now at 4 years of not meeting academic standards. 4 years. I don't know if they're in a row, but that's pretty significant. So instead of providing them with the resources that they need to help these kids do better academically, they're stripping them of resources. They're making Martin go through a lot of changes in their leadership.
Right.
They recently had a new principal, and just about every couple of years they're having to find a new principal or a new vice principal, or whatever the case is. There's a lot of fluctuation there that is affecting the kids inside, and that's why they're not exactly being able to bring their test scores up. So it's more the responsibility of the superintendent and the school board to understand what their responsibilities are and to fulfill them with all of these kids. And when that's not happening, that's when you see a lot of these empty seats.
I want to just go back a little bit to before No Child Left Behind.
Okay.
Because here in Austin, what happened was there was a desegregation case in the courts, and AISD lost. So the courts forced the school district to come up with some plans. They came up with a magnet school programming. They closed Allen Junior High School, which is a feeder school to Johnston, and so you had busing going both ways. Pete just mentioned when he went to school, that's the time that this was happening, and so it worked well actually because you had good students as well as poor students, a mixture going both ways, and so you have that equilibrium.
Right.
And equity as well, and so you had the schools performing well, but when the court said, and by the way, the Liberal Arts Academy was open at Johnston, and the Science Academy was open at LBJ to bring in the white students into East Austin, which worked. But then when the court said, "Hey, Austin Independent School District, looks like you settled down, you're working okay. We're going to let you go." So when the courts went away, then the busing stopped, but it didn't quite stop because Allen Junior High School stayed closed, and you still had kids, even though kids were not coming from west to east, kids were still going east to west.
Right.
So and then the other magnet schools at the other schools, so the enrollment went down, and the kids are going elsewhere. Now parents had choices, and even more so with the No Child Left Behind. And so if schools were underperforming, then they could keep going out. That's still happening today. That's why what Pete said a while ago, going down to 500 students, that's been the result of that history. And so that's something that school board has failed to grapple with. And they can by bringing back some of the things they did. I'll go into that in a little bit.
And I think it's important to speak of. You spoke about kind of a mass exodus of people going to charter schools and other things. Some of those schools, I can give you an example for like Austin Can Academy. They have 600 students that are more relatively East Side students, and that's for credit recovery. These are students that the AISD said that we can't do anything with you because of their personal, barriers at home.
Right.
And so this is when a charter school stepped in and did credit recovery and other things. So you have a multitude of charter schools now. So what that means is even if this bond passed, even if we got taxed and passed, it doesn't necessarily mean that all these students are all of a sudden going to drop what they're doing right now and flood into Austin schools.
Right.
So to use this as a premise is a misnomer.
And that's what they're using right now, that if they pass this bond, everybody will be coming back and everybody will be happy.
Yeah, there's a lot of
One of the
misleading
things.
information out there.
So what are the messages are you hearing from the school? We're kind of breaking off with a whole bunch of different areas. I'm kind of, now that you
Yeah.
mentioned about the messages that they're bringing out, I'm kind of curious to do that because
There's a lot of areas to cover with
Right,
it.
because
There's a lot of
I do
areas
wanna talk
cover,
about-
But one of the main ones is that they're funding the worst first. They're funding the worst schools with the worst conditions first. Well, we've done our research, and that's not true. What we have found is that they're funding the loudest first.
Right.
And out of $1 billion bond, Bowie High School, which is in Southwest Austin, is getting $91 million. That's almost about 8% of the bond money by itself. Travis High School receives $9.5 million. When you compare those two schools, Travis High School actually has worse facility conditions than Bowie. So why are they only getting the $9.5 million?
Right.
In that case, that's not the worst first. When we talk about elementary schools, Cassis is getting like $33 million. And then you can look at a school like St. Elmo Elementary is getting $500,000. So, and their FCA score is worse than Cassis. So when
What's an FCA score?
I'm sorry, the bond money is being distributed to schools. The FCA score means that this facility scored this many points based on what they need.
Right.
So the greater the needs, the less points they scored. So think about it as a grade A through F. If the schools are receiving an F grade, they should be getting more money. But instead, the schools that are receiving a B plus are the ones getting the money.
Okay.
I believe it stands for Facility Conditions Assessment.
Okay.
Yes, and that's a name that the district uses to discuss the bond and to rate the schools so that we know how much money each school is getting.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool.
Can I throw something in there? I'm not sure what they're trying to do by switching all these students around. And as Pete mentioned, just because they get this bond money doesn't mean, why are these kids going to leave a winning thing like some of these charter schools? You mentioned Can Academy. I know they're very good. We've had some association with some of these. Is it Allen Elementary over here on the east side? It's empty.
Yes.
And I know that there's a charter school wants to rent them or buy them. Is that correct?
That was the University of Texas charter
Elementary
school.
charter school over
And
there?
as a matter of fact, they were set to go in this fall, but the school board member from East Austin, Jamie, went to the school board when he saw a letter going out to the
Not
parents.
Jamie, huh?
Yes,
See,
Jamie,
here,
yes.
Jamie.
District two?
Yes, he saw a letter that went out to the parents of UT Charter School, elementary school, and he brought that up to the board, so that was stopped. So
Okay.
the school remains empty except for
If-
some daycare students that they have there.
Okay, if it was to go through, would the students going to that school come from that direct neighborhood?
Well, for the most part, yes. UT Elementary School is in East Austin, and it works by enrollment, an open enrollment where
Open enrollment means-
students can parents can bring their kids there, but if they have too many names, then they're all put into a bowl to be taken out by allotment by what do you call that? They're just picked out.
Well, still, it would probably be.
So anyway, just up to the point of however many students that school will hold. So yes, for the most part they're there, but other students from other areas can come in too.
I don't need a microphone because you can hear me loud and clear anyways. Here's a dumb question. You know how the city's talking about, building like homes, not homes, but housing the homeless. Is there a possibility of any of these schools turning into like homes for the homeless?
Well, as a matter of fact, I should say yes, truthfully. Any building, any church building can be turned into housing.
Well, they can make a bunkhouse in a room or something.
Any federal building can be turned into housing. Any place can be turned into housing.
Okay.
But what we're proposing is to turn Allen Junior High School back to Johnston High School, because if you look at it, Johnston has been a problem. At LBJ, the school district board member from there is afraid that if LASA is moved into Johnston, LBJ is going to be in the same situation as Johnston is. Allen Junior High School is a feeder school for the Johnston campus. There's no feeder school for Johnston.
Oh,
The
Lord.
school district says that Martin Junior High School is, but that is actually a feeder for Austin High School. Half of those students will go to Austin, half to Johnston. So that's why Austin High School will have close to 2,000 students, and Johnston only 500.
I mean, I
Okay.
It's
think
ridiculous, closing all these schools,
Right.
over here because, the community schooling was always something big. Like when I was growing up, we went to the school.
You went
that
to your
was
neighborhood
fast.
school with your
Yes.
kids from your
Went to
neighborhood.
neighborhood schools and stuff,
Yeah.
and I know administration has a lot to do with these schools and how they're performing.
All right, Pete.
I think
All right,
if
I'm
you,
outta here.
I think
Thank you, ma'am.
if you examine that, I mean, what you have to understand is, we've talked about a lot of things. We've talked about charter schools and other aspects, but what you have to understand is neighborhood schools make communities,
Yes.
and you cannot. There is a distinct correlation between gentrification in the East Side and the closing of or the moving of students from East Side Memorial to Old Anderson or whatever. I mean, and then it's there. These students are being moved to create a super school. I don't care what the school board wants to say about it. They want to be in the highest levels of federal rankings. So they want to take the best of the best from the science academies and the liberal arts academy, whatever they have LASA. They want to bring more students in so they can have higher test scores, higher rankings on a federal level, and they're willing to do that by destroying poorer communities. Nobody's speaking to that. Nobody's putting it in those terms, but I'm putting it in those terms because if you follow the facts, if you look at the movements historically,
Can I go
that is
up?
what's happening.
Can I follow up real quick on that? If it was, they did take that elementary school over, it would be a charter school. Kids from the local area could go there. Johnson High School, I know that it's Southwest Key could take over that one. ASD could be making money, and all these students would I believe they'd pack the school if Southwest Key took over. Is that correct?
Well, the thing is that that's kind of something that started. I've been at this for 10 years now. When Johnson
Yeah.
High School was about to be closed and repurposed, we went to the school district to keep it open. We kept it open, but there's some problems associated with that. Southwest Key wanted to take it over at that time, but we were against that because we wanted to keep our community school. We didn't want to change it. We wanted to stay with the community. Now, the other charter school which came into being Idea Allen, was different. That one was not going to take over the school. Those are going to be administrators for the district. They're going to be managing the school. The kids will still be going to Johnston. But that fell off. So now we're in the situation where
That sounded like a good idea,
I know it was
because
because
they're obviously doing well.
okay, and a follow-up to that, the school district keeps complaining that they've lost about 2,000 students. 2 years ago, they were complaining they lost 2,000 students. And guess what? Idea Public Schools had 2,000 students that took away from AISD, when at the time they had a non-compete clause that they would not set up shop anywhere. They would have the students in AISD, but then the school district, when they cut that contract, allowed Idea to go out and build schools. Now you have the great, beautiful building Montopolis. You have the great, big,
Yeah.
beautiful building in Slaughter. You have that building, bowling alley, that was turned into a school in North Austin, and they took away all those students. Now they've taken away 2,800 students and climbing because they're going to build more schools.
Well, they're still, I know that these charter schools are willing to work with the community. I mean, as far as like what you said about, I know Johnson High School was like the center of the community. I didn't realize a lot of these things. Anderson High School back in the 70s, and that was the black community. And it was like the catalyst to hold families together and everything. And when they took that and started busting them out, what happened? And I know that if I could real quick, if Southwest Keys, we know because they worked with the public before, and if they were to run Johnson High School, they'd have it filled. It would be community involvement again, and I'm not sure if I quite comprehend. ASD is wanting to bust students all over the place to get. Never mind. Y'all got great information. I'm glad y'all could come down here.
Well, I think it's important to
I get confused easily.
to boil things down. Schools create communities, and if you want to change a community, if you want to change the makeup of the community, if you want to bring in more people, more gentrified people, a higher economic class, then you have to get rid of the community, and the way to do that is to get rid of the school, and that is the underlying motive of why they want to move the students from East Side Memorial.
Real quick, I got to go real fast on this. Could that be what's happening in Mendez over in our neighborhood?
Yes.
Well, Mendez has a different story on that
It
part.
does.
From what I understand on Mendez, they just have some really bad administrative people and weren't managing or taking care of the kids as the way they should. You can put a couple of blames on that. You can blame that there's problems with the households. You can also put blames that the educators weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing when it comes to educating the students for to prepare for STAR.
Yeah.
If you're looking at 4 years in a row, something's going on.
Damn.
And my understanding is that last year the administrators weren't up to the task to take care of it. Now they're in the last throes of before something bad happens to it. I will say this: there is a plan from another group that is going to try to do what they can to save the school from failing STAR. There's actually a plan in place that's being worked on as we speak right now. I know the people that are doing it. I know the idea that's going to happen, and it's a really good program. It's just a matter of saying, okay, when do you want to start?
Well, Mendez is, and junior highs are kind of like high school. Mendez is part of the community.
Right.
With neighborhood kids going there and all. Go ahead, Ma. I know you got something to say about
Well,
Mendez.
Mr. Customer told me that the principal, that's not the one that's there now.
Right.
The previous principal had worked and everything and started building up the school and doing better as far as the stuff was going. And then they changed principals again, and then it was back
Right.
to a downward slide.
Right.
So that's why I say administration, give the gazillion dollars to the teachers so that they can teach and do what they want.
Get rid of the administrators.
Well, it's not that. What it is that you need to have an administrator that's going to have a school administrator that has a clear vision of what they want to do. At that point, then after that, the school says, okay, what do you need? What do we do to help? I say this because from personal experience, which I won't talk about here because it's public TV.
Yeah, we don't
and
want to talk.
we don't want to go into that one. I can't get in trouble with that one. It's possible. But the vision has to be sold, and you have to make sure that the buy-in comes in not only from the school district, but also all the way down to the student or to the teachers. And the teachers are going to be the biggest one. If the teachers are complaining about what's going on, then you got a problem. And if those teachers have an in with someone above the administrator, yeah, the administrator is going to be gone. Doesn't really matter what happens. And you can test, you can monitor a student's success within the first semester and see how they're going to do. And if there's success going on, great. But if there isn't, and they got documented proof that the assessments are not being where they're at, yeah, they're going to probably make a change.
Well, my sister, she was a teacher as well. I won't say what school district or what school, but the principal of the school just happened to be the wife of the school board member.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, so, it was like, it was like they couldn't complain or anything to the school board because that guy was on there.
Right.
And so, that kind of threw a loop in their little, wrench in their little bucket.
Well, I think
Thank you, Mommy.
I think that brings it back to our kind of discussion.
Yeah, I didn't mean to drag us out like this. We're gonna run out of time, yeah.
No, but we're not against, improving schools, building wise or whatever. But it's what's most effective for the community, what's better for the students of Austin.
Right.
And I think that's the question that needs to be put first, rather than having a school board with predetermined desires to earmark things.
Right.
I just want to mention about Mendez right quick, because
Thank you.
I actually volunteer in the community there at River City Youth Foundation. And I know some of the kids that go there. Now, in Southeast Austin, you have a situation where you have a lot of people from East Austin that have moved there. So you have the communities are almost alike now.
Yeah, it is.
And the difference in schools is that in East Austin, like I mentioned earlier, there's no feeder school or Johnson where there's no middle school, there is a high school. In Southeast Austin, there is a middle school, but there is no high school.
Yeah,
And you have
Atkins or something like that
It's
down.
Aikens. It's Aikens. and,
you have a large area without a high school. Those kids will go to Aikens or to Crockett or Travis, and so they have to be bused out there. And so that community then does not have that feeling of having their own high school. That they can like you said earlier, that's what makes a community, and that's the spirit of the community.
For ours, Mendez is, I understand that, yeah.
So they lack that. Now, in Mendez now, they're in danger, like Pierce was. There's no more Pierce Junior High School because they had to, they were closed and repurposed, just like Johnson High School. So they're in the third year. Well, actually now, they've gone through 3 years. Now they're in the fourth year. Of lacking, having to go through an improvement required plan. If they don't do it this year, then they could either close, or the state could say, we're going to give you one more year again, and if they fail there, they will have to close. And so what's going to happen then to a community with no junior high, no high school?
I think it's important to say when I went to Johnson as well, the students from Mendez came into Johnson, so they also furthered our numbers. So, I mean, you have historical connections that you can revisit to improve those numbers without having to move a population of students out of school.
So in East Austin, let's go back to the schools there. We're looking at a few schools that are going to be closed if this bond passes. No, let me rephrase that.
Whether or not.
Regardless of what happens, they're looking at trying to consolidate these areas. And if the bond passes, how much money of that is going to be going to East Austin?
It's about $330 million.
$230 million, and the rest
compared
goes to
to 680 million that goes to West Austin.
and they're saying that they're the ones that need it the most.
No, they're actually saying that East Austin students are being funded the most through this bond, which is not accurate. Yeah,
Sorry, I had to shake my head there a little bit.
it's not accurate.
So let's visit that one a little bit, because you and I know there's a misnomer on that part. The bond. So what they're saying is that the bond is paying for the education of the students. Essentially, that's what they're. If it gets passed,
The hardware, the material.
they're talking about the hardware
The
and materials.
building itself, the facilities.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with academic performance. It has nothing to do with teacher salaries. It's all about the buildings.
And are they looking at upgrading them, updating them, or and didn't
All
they
of
do
the
some
above.
didn't they do some updates recently with the past 2014, 2015, or 2013 bond?
Yes.
There's some updates, and
There-
now they're saying, is it similar updates that they're looking at doing, or is it something quote unquote totally different?
It's similar. It's technology. It's actually, yeah, technology, security, building needs like leaky roofs, new ACs.
They got tar for that stuff for the roofs, right? They put a little patch on there and they're good to go. And the technology, how come they're not getting it from Dell? I mean, seriously, they get. I mean, you can get a company out, Samsung and Dell, who are in Austin, and Apple, that can donate some of that stuff and say, hey, we're going to give you this technology. A Chromebook, less than $200.
Yeah. Well, I think it's more like the wiring to be able to handle some of the technology.
Okay, let me just shake my.
Yeah,
You
That's a letter in his eye. I might
hard
handle
it is
that
to
one.
stick a wire into a wall.
I get it. I get it.
Well, I think this needs to be spoke on too. I mean, historically in the East Side, they were neglected for a generation.
Mhm.
I mean, I'll put an example. When I went to school, for my I went to both the LAA and regular Johnson, so I saw the comparisons of what we had in front of us. When I went to the LAA, it was top of the line, everything, computers and all that. When I went to regular Johnson, they were running MS-DOS program in 1997. So that
Yeah, I
was
can see that.
but that was the thing. That was the
Well, 97. You had Windows had just barely come out.
yes. But all the other schools had Windows. When I went to the Liberal
Really?
Arts Academy, we had Windows computers
They were
and
going out with
everything.
Windows 95. Huh?
Yeah, and so when we went to regular Johnson, it was MS-DOS. Now I bring it to the point of that is because you have a historical lineage of not supporting schools. And now all of a sudden they're like, we want to make top of the line schools,
Mhm.
give us $1 billion, when you have a history of disparaging people. Now you're using the same argument to remove those people that you historically disparaged, just to move them all over from point A to point B, to bring in some more people.
Right.
I can't help myself. You voted for him.
I didn't vote for these group.
Well, it's been a liberal, left-leaning council and school board this whole time.
Let me go.
I had to throw that in there. Go ahead. I know you're going to come back.
Okay, so if you look at where the money's going to,
I'm sorry, I had to throw that in there.
It's walls and paints and brick and mortar. It's not going for those academic needs. You mentioned a Chromebook.
Right.
Imagine how many you could get for $80 million.
Oh, yeah.
With $60 more million, with $25 more million. That's what's going into the building of those new schools. So, and you're talking about schools that are not needed because those buildings are there already. So yeah, they're getting some money for those new schools,
Right.
but it's not going to where it's needed, and that makes for an unequitable flow of money.
That is a very good point. You could buy how many of those Chrome for
yeah,
buy it in volume, you get cheaper. So
I mean, there's districts out there that are about this size that all have tablets of one kind or another. And there's there's always the case where they get lost, stolen, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But it's possible to do that part.
No,
Yes, ma'am.
I want to say a couple of things about Eastside
Eastside
Memorial real quick. Eastside Memorial does not get $1 until after they move. So the school, where it's at right now, is not going to see $1 until 6 years later. And that school, like Pete was saying, has been through a lot of changes through the administration. There's been a point where they've had a new principal every 6 months, and it's been stripped of resources. So they are right back in the same situation that they were just a couple of years ago when the TEA commissioner came down to visit
Right.
Eastside Memorial. And I also want to say that the superintendent and the school board have publicly said that after Eastside Memorial moves over to the old Anderson building, they're building a track on its roof.
A track.
A track.
What?
Like, okay, explain the
Athletic
track.
track.
Explain the track. I'm
An
looking
athletic track for people to play football or go running or
on top of the
on
roof
top of the roof.
of
Because
Eastside.
the old Anderson building, if you know where it's located, it's in a very awkward piece of land that has a giant slope on one side. So
Yeah.
basically that side is unusable.
Right.
And so the other side has a field that's already there, but it's not at high school capacity yet. So
And Eastside has one.
it has one, yes. So they're seriously considering building the track on the roof because of that.
So yeah, to continue with that, so when you talk about equity,
Right.
you have a situation right now where at LBJ, the kids have all those track fields, football fields to practice on, lots of athletic facilities. Same thing at the Johnson campus. You have a softball field, a baseball field, you have a track field, football field area, you have tennis courts. All that will be gone, will be lost by those students if they're moved. They'll get one football field right next to the school, but that's it. Unless they add the track field on top of the roof.
I mean, let's make no mistake. This bond is being used as a political maneuver as favors for people, and they're punishing the poor kids. There's no other way you can put it. People don't want to put it in realistic terms, but there are parents that have political clout that are using their influence to make the school board do things. There's no reason why there should be a school in Mueller. They don't have the population, and there's schools there that are under enrolled. There's no realistic reason to have a school built there, but a school's being built there. So, because some parents want a new school.
They don't want to go to the east side.
Yeah.
I've actually
They
heard
are
that one.
expanding. They want to move the kids out of Eastside Memorial because they want a super magnet school that they can compete federally. And regardless of the rights of that community, they're willing to trample all over that just so they can say, look, we have a top number 5 school in the nation. They're willing to build their vision on the backs of poor people.
Yep.
And that is the reality.
Yep.
There's no other way they can put it.
Yep.
Oh, man.
Another
ma'am.
misleading piece of information that AISD is sharing is that this is not going to raise property taxes,
Yes.
and that's completely false
Correct.
as well. I've heard estimates that it'll raise taxes anywhere from $70 for every $100,000 that your house is valued at, up to $350 per year.
Oh, the rent's going up.
Right. Yeah, there was actually
Big time.
a report out today on KLBJ that there was a group that's already asked for the information. They haven't been able to do it. They said that the average mortgage or the average tax is going to go up like about $600-$700
Yeah.
per year
It's going up.
on a home. I guess on an average price home, which is what now $200,000, maybe $250.
Yeah, I
Fifty.
think it's
About
higher, yeah.
So 300,000.
Yeah.
So they're going to be charged. They're going to be paying that much. And now people will say that's not a lot. But if you consider the fact that where some of
That's
the
on
homes
top
are
of
at,
what you already.
that's on top of what you already are going to be getting. So and they're not releasing. And the school, for the official record, the school's not releasing all the information so that you can make an assessment on that end.
And I
Right.
requested that. I
And
requested.
they haven't given it.
They said that they did modules and studies internally that weren't set for public view, but they used taxpayers' money to do those assessments. So unless I do a Freedom of Information Act,
Right, which you won't
then-
get in time.
Yeah. So then
So-
why did they do those assessments and we're afraid to put them out there? Is what I'm saying. Because what they're selling is not. It doesn't meet the smell test.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're using the money to help pay for new schools, which they don't need just yet. They're going to be eventually selling off properties that have low numbers or whatever the case may be. What's the fight that's being given? Because here's what I'm hearing from several people is that it's an East Side versus West Side battle here. What's being done on the East Side? Or what are your groups doing on the East Side to help have more people vote? And what are you guys doing on the West Side to let people know that this bond's bad?
If I could real quick, today's the last day for registering to vote.
Well, we can't do any
late now.
right now. Sorry.
Yeah, it's got to be in by midnight, which means I don't have my stuff. You can't, I can't register
People get on the
nobody.
computer
Yeah.
right quick and
Yeah,
get
exactly.
online and register to vote.
On both sides, we have been meeting with people across the city. Anytime that a group wants to hear our presentation, we present and give them all of the information that we have, and that's happened across the city. Same thing with the voters. We did a couple of voter registration drives. We're pushing out for voters to come out to the ballot and vote during early voting and on election day. So it's, like I said earlier, it's a lot of grassroots organizing, but with a bunch of parents who are volunteers. but all of us feel very strongly about speaking against the bond. So, you know, we're this is my second full-time job.
Right.
You know, I'm dedicated to doing this, and, you know, we've already met people almost every single day. You know, our calendar is very full, and I get phone calls every day from somebody new who wants to hear more information, who wants to have us come and speak somewhere, who wants to meet and wants to help in some way. There's a lot of people across the city, not just in East Austin, not just in West Austin. In fact, let me tell you that more people call me from West Austin to say that they're very upset with AISD right now.
Right.
And so I would say that they're just as upset as the East Austin folks, you know. And we don't want this to be an East versus West. We're not here to divide. We're here to inform. We want people to really understand what this bond is about and have that understanding when they go to the polls on election day or during early voting, because unfortunately AISD is being very misleading with all of their claims. One of the things they've talked about is that these buildings are crumbling. Well, we have an entire construction department that works for AISD that's been collecting a salary for years. So why would these buildings be in such terrible condition?
Very good point.
And I think we need to come up front and be clear. This is not an East Side thing. This is not a West Side thing. This is an Austin thing. And it's an Austin thing to do what is best for your children, to hold your administration people accountable. Okay, this is not just creating one big schools or a couple good schools just to look good. It's making the hard decisions to do what is best for all the children of Austin for the future, and holding your school board accountable for the decisions it makes in the future and the decisions it made historically. That's why people need to vote no on this bond.
And we're doing several things, getting the word out via Facebook, on the internet, also some forums. We've been in a few forums already. We were in one two last week, and we have another one coming up this Thursday, and there's another one Wednesday as well. And
Taco
also
Shack or whatever it's called.
and also there's a fundraiser at the Tamale House.
Tamale House.
Wednesday.
I know it's in the flyer.
You're
That's
close.
nice,
You were close to that one, Pokey. Yeah. So and you have some details.
Los
on
Texas
those.
Wranglers is going to be there, I believe, right?
Yes, that's
Okay.
right. Wednesday.
Yeah. So Wednesday we're presenting at Houston Tillotson as well. There's an equity bond presentation there. And then that same night, we're also at the Tamale House for a fundraiser for the C's PAC. We're trying to raise money because we want to buy street signs and things like that to promote, voting no to the bond.
Right.
And then on Thursday, we're having our forum at the Eastview campus of ACC at 7 o'clock. And it's to present the same information again from our perspective. We do show a short video that Austin ISD created regarding the bond. And I will say that video is entirely about money. That's all they talk about, and you don't really see any kids in it until the very, very end of the video. But we invited AISD to be at this forum, and so far AISD doesn't want to appear.
Yeah, they have a tendency of doing that, especially like with us.
Yeah.
We've invited. I think we invited them to come on.
We had before. I did not for this particular show because I knew they wasn't going to. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we've historically asked them to come onto the show to talk about stuff, and they've refused, which is fine because it's a chance to go and talk with everybody else that's more important than the
if I
people
could
out
real quick, we probably don't have time to talk about any solutions y'all might have in mind.
Well, we're having a town hall meeting on Sunday, October 29th from 4 to 6 at Santa Julia Church. And so we've invited AISD people because, you can make videos, you can say what your elevator speeches are, but it's time to really get engrossed in a discussion and a conversation with the people of Austin, because this is going to kind of maneuver our lives for the next decade. You're going to be paying for this bond.
Well, you're a gambling man. What's your chances? You think it's actually passing? I can't see how anybody could vote for this bond.
I don't think it's going to pass because I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that it doesn't pass, whether I'm successful or not. If I'm betting on ASD or me, I'm always gonna bet on me first.
Awesome.
Now,
Ten four.
on solutions, there's a slide on the slideshow that was presented with this organization, the CSPAC, and in it shows the possibility of moving boundaries, so that if you look at the southwest side, you have giant buoy up here in the
Yeah.
southwest. If you can move that boundary so kids can go to Crockett, in turn, move the boundaries of Crockett so they can go to Travis. Austin High School as well. Austin High has a huge area of students. You can move that boundary and, of course, Travis as well. So with that alone, you wouldn't need that money at Bowie that they're trying to get. And also, regarding Austin High School, the boundary at 35, that could go east, because that boundary in East Austin is actually split. So if you go down to Kamal Street, well, that's part of Austin High. It's not part of the Johnson campus. So with the boundaries and also the transfer policies that they have as well, that could be used to get more kids back into those under-enrolled areas.
So now, what's the school district saying about changing boundaries? I know there was a couple of other school districts recently that made some changes to that part.
Yeah, you know, what's interesting is that the Boundaries Committee actually made recommendations to the school board ahead of the bond being approved, and they recommended that boundaries change. It fell on deaf ears.
So none of them approved it.
Yeah.
It fell on deaf ears.
Yeah, let me tell you, there's a boundary committee in the school district, and I was part of that. And that same type of conversation would always come up. We need to change boundaries, but then we'd always end up with, well, the board's not going to go for that. They don't want to hear it, so it would not go up.
I mean, so ultimately, there's ways to resolve our needs and our issues
Right.
with school enrollment without sticking the taxpayer with money, with the bill.
This is the easy way out, asking for bond money.
So that they can do it.
Yeah.
Understood.
It's the easy way.
And if you got friends who are contractors, it's also going to be a profitable way.
Yeah, I know a certain politician
that's
that's going to probably
exactly-
take advantage of that, but I'll leave that one alone.
Yeah, we're down to about a minute
Well,
left
this
now.
is a developer's bond.
Well,
It has nothing to do with students. It's a
yeah,
developer's
exactly.
bond.
I know a certain politician that will enjoy this.
I
part
do
very much.
appreciate, we
So-
appreciate y'all coming on. We're going to try to have this up on Facebook because y'all were really interesting.
Yeah.
It's you can see how this can really confuse people like me. Not personal, but about me. But you know,
It's a lot of information.
it's a lot of information,
lot
and
of
you just can't
information.
figure out just what the
Heck.
heck they're trying to do. And if all the students are going somewhere else, then how is this gonna, like you said, how are you gonna get them back? You got to compete. They don't seem to want to compete.
And that's the
No,
thing.
they never have.
If they were to bring in more programs, reconstitute the population, work on the communities, then you'll have a more vibrant community.
Yep.
Then you'll have
Tenfold.
more.
Yeah.
So what do
But
we
they
have
don't
going on
wanna
next
do
week?
that.
30 seconds. Next week will be some Pflugerville candidates. We do appreciate y'all coming on because I know Larry's a long time. I know he's always been really informed in all this stuff. I know you've been
And-
working
and
on the community
Miss
a long
Loera.
time.
Miss Loera, by the way, officially for
Loera.
everybody that's curious on that part.
10 seconds.
And Peter, thank you very much for being on the show.
Yeah, we'll be back next week.
We will have the song. We will be back next week with candidates from the Pflugerville City Council. This will be fun. So until then, see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.